What happens within the tropical cyclone? How we can define these tropical cyclone? So tropical cyclone generally large scale air mass. Hello everyone, I am Sanjeev Kumar, Faculty of Geography. Today I bring another topic, that is front. Now what does mean by this front? Front refers to three-dimensional boundary zone where two different air mass contrast with each other. So it is three-dimensional boundary zone. Particularly three-dimensional boundary zone that existed between the cold air mass and warm air mass. Most of these fronts generally likely to be occur within high latitudinal areas or mid latitudinal areas. Means generally such front develop around 40 degree towards the 60 degree latitude. Now based on intensity of particular air mass means large volume of air having a specific temperature, humidity, density, etc. Means when large column or volume of air get accumulated or stay over particular point of time, over particular place, then it started to acquire inherit the characteristic of that region. Suppose that if a very large voluminous air mass, air block, if existed in equatorial region or country, then it started to acquire high temperature, it started to acquire more humidity, etc. Then there likely to be more low air pressure in such areas. Similarly, if very large voluminous air column that stay around mid latitude or in high latitudinal areas around the pole, it started to inherit the characteristic of that region. Probably the temperature of air mass likely to be more cold, the air likely to be more dry and dense. So that based on characteristic of that region, based on characteristic of that voluminous air mass, generally we can define the cold air mass or warm air mass. Suppose that generally these cold air mass generally move from polar regions towards the equatorial region, while warm air mass generally move from equatorial regions towards the polar region. Okay, what happens within the cold front? When these different air mass meet at particular place, they form a boundary zone. They form a transboundary zone. Means here, suppose from this direction, this is slow, warm moving air block, air mass. It is warm air mass, and on other end, from polar side, there is cold air mass. This cold air mass generally started to advance into the warm air mass. What happens? That cold air mass generally having high speed. This cold air mass generally more dense and located close to the ground. So the warm air likely to be uplifted over the cold air. So gradually what happens, that cold air uplifted this warm air, and when warm air this uplifted to high altitude areas, it led to formation of clouds, and such clouds generally are vertical towering clouds. They are typically the cumulonimbus kind of cloud. Cumulus means heap-like structure and nimbus means associated with lot of water, watery clouds. So these clouds generally develop in mid-latitude or high latitudinal areas typically, or during winter time period in low latitudinal areas or at high altitude areas, where two air front started to meet with each other. Then cumulonimbus cloud, very large tower vertical clouds having cauliflower top-like structure or having anvil shape. Okay, such clouds are defined as cumulonimbus cloud. Now, these cumulonimbus cloud are mainly characterized by very heavy or intensive rainfall. Means generally such rain occur for short duration, but this rain is very intensive in nature. There is very high intensity. Further, they are also characterized by thunder. Means these clouds generally known because of excellent thunder, the sound which created when two air mass strike with each other, or lightning. There are no other clouds which are typically characterized by thunder and lightning. This lightning also cause fire over the ground. Generally, most of the time what happens that this fire when started immediately is doused by heavy rainfall, else it may lead to death of animals, human being, plant or any other species over which it fall. Okay. So, thunder and lightning, it led to huge devastation effect in particular region. It may also lead to cloud burst, means there is more than 10 centimeter of rainfall within just 1 hour. So, this is about the cold front, means here cold air mass intruding inside the warm air mass, and it led to replace the warm air mass or uplifted rapidly the warm air mass which rises to high altitude and led to formation of cumulonimbus cloud. Let's move with another type of air mass, that is warm air mass. Now here warm air mass, generally warm air mass moving faster towards the cold air mass. So what do you think? If warm air mass moving with faster speed towards the cold air mass, do you think that warm air mass will be uplifted or cold air mass will be uplifted? So it is always the warm air mass likely to be uplifted because they are light in weight, and cold air mass likely to be intrude inside the warm air mass. What happens now? Warm air in comparison to the previous one, cold air mass here gradually uplifted. So the front which created over there between cold air which is moving this side and warm air which is moving this side, the transition zone, it is known as warm front. And when warm air gradually rises, not up to very high altitude just like in cold front. In cold front, generally cold air mass rapidly replace the warm air mass, and most of the warm air likely to be rises uplifted from the ground. Here in case of warm front, generally warm air gradually rising and leading to formation of cloud after condensation, means water vapor transformed into the water droplets or ice crystals when at high altitude there is reduction in the temperature, when it feel there is low temperature. So here there are clouds. Which kind of cloud are formed here? Generally nimbostratus. Nimbo associated with the watery means water cloud, stratus means horizontal sheet like clouds. Generally such clouds are dark in nature. Such clouds are very common during monsoon time period as well, and they are generally known for their rainfall characteristic. But there is no such characteristic here. There is no such typical classification of these clouds just like the cumulonimbus cloud which have huge lightning and thunder. But they generally known for continuous long time rainfall. So intensity of rainfall likely to be lesser than the cumulonimbus cloud. There is more continuous rainfall for long time period, maybe up to week, maybe up to fourth quarterly, etc. Now this is all about warm front. We discussed two, cold air front, warm air front. Now moving, suppose that if two air mass, warm and cold, moving towards each other and no air mass is able to replace each other, means suppose that this is warm air front, warm air mass, suppose this is cold air mass. Now they are come in contact with each other. Let's suppose here they come in contact with each other, but what happens that wind are blowing generally just parallel like this in same directions. So they remain for long duration. Neither warm air mass likely to be replace the cold air mass, nor cold air mass able to replace the warm air mass. So we call them generally stationary front. Means here no warm nor warm air mass nor cold air mass able to replace each other, but gradually what happens over a long duration, a long period of time, gradually either warm air mass transformed into the cold air mass by reduction reduction in temperature or acquisition of characteristic of cold air mass, or cold air mass may transformed into the warm air mass. So what kind of cloud weather conditions likely to be arises in this place? The cloud or weather conditions likely to be mixed in nature here. Means mixed weather condition. It depend on what kind of transition taking place. It depend on what was the temperature, density, humidity that existed within cold and warm air mass respectively. So they may resemble the characteristic of warm air mass like, or may resembles the characteristic of cold air mass weather. Means there is mixed weather of both warm and cold front likely to be developed here. Now moving towards occluded front. Occluded front. Now within this occluded front, what happens? Suppose that this is just an aggressive form of cold air mass. Means what happens here? Cold air mass with very high speed moving, advancing towards the warm air mass. Or when cold air mass generally encroaches acquired the warm air mass because of higher speed than the cold air mass, further it is more dense, located generally remain around the ground. Warm air mass, suppose that both are moving in same direction, still the cold air mass likely to be occupy overtake the warm air mass. So here cold air occupy or overtake, just like fast moving vehicle overtake over the slow moving vehicle. Similarly, fast moving air mass likely to be overtake over slow moving air mass. So cold air occupy or overtake warm air mass. And it led to completely cut off, occlude. We call it occlude. Means the warm air mass generally occluded, cut off from the ground. Or we can say the warm air mass generally completely gets separated from the ground. Then such kind of condition generally led to dissipation of development of cyclonic phenomena, etc. Then gradually the warm air mass which completely cut off from the ground become less stable and may likely to be dissolved rapidly. So weather condition here generally likely to be fair, yeah, suitable. So this is about different kind of air mass. Now we are moving how these air mass likely to be affect over the cyclone. So generally extratropical cyclone develop because when two contrasting air mass meet each other, generally in mid latitude or high latitudinal areas. Now let's go for cyclone, tropical cyclone. Just quickly, what happens within the tropical cyclone? How we can define these tropical cyclone? So tropical cyclone generally large scale air mass which generally having lowest pressure at the center and highest temperature, lowest pressure and highest temperature at the center. Now it is typically characterized by inward spiraling winds because of Coriolis force. Now wind likely to be spiral in such way, means there is anti-clockwise direction of these winds in northern hemisphere. Now this is eye of cyclone. Around this eye we also experience the eye wall where generally warm air current started to rise or great convection current started to rise, while when these great convection current rises into high altitude areas, then there is reduction due to low temperature, air started to become saturate, here there is condensation started. When water vapor transformed into the condensation, then it also releases the latent heat in the upper atmosphere which further intensify the convection current. So in such way, the air which rising from the ground continuously automatically have feeding mechanism. Yeah, you can say this system becomes self-sustainatory in its own way, self-sustaining in its own way. So this is eye of cyclone, having lowest pressure, highest temperature, generally eye of cyclone. In the mid या central point, experience the descending air mass, and around this eye there is ascending air mass or great convection current that rises. So this is about the tropical cyclone. Now let's look over the extratropical cyclone. Extratropical cyclone generally just opposite, which started to develop in mid latitude or high latitudinal areas, particularly from 30 to 60 degree latitude, north and south, mainly in north. These anticyclone started to develop. What is the mechanism here? At center you have highest pressure, means just opposite condition, and lowest temperature. Towards outside there is continuous increment in the temperature and reduction in the pressure, means here you have low pressure, higher temperature. So wind started to move outward like this. When wind move outward, due to Coriolis force, wind deflected towards right hand in northern hemisphere. So wind generally deflected like this. Wind deflected like this. So the direction of wind is in the motion of clockwise direction. So generally such cyclone is started to develop when there are two air mass having different characteristic is started to meet. Generally extratropical cyclone, these are also known as anticyclone या extratropical cyclone. Generally they develop during winter time period or high altitude areas. They are characterized typically by fair weather condition. Means generally entire region maybe from 500 kilometer to 1000 kilometer, they are extended in much more diameter than the tropical cyclone. Tropical cyclone extended generally 100 to 500 kilometer. They cover less areas but more destructive. These temperate cyclone, anticyclone या extratropical cyclone generally characterized by high pressure condition, and these anticyclone generally dominate particular region with very high pressure like condition, means characterized by fair weather condition. There is no such eye here, no eye which created within the tropical cyclone. So that's all for today. Further we will continue differences between all these tropical, temperate cyclone and different variation like tornado, twister in ahead या coming classes. Thank you very much. Bye bye. Take care.